You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your PMP certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Hybrid project management exists because not all work fits neatly into a single delivery style. Some portions of a project are discovery-heavy, where uncertainty is high, and iterative feedback loops are essential. Other portions are compliance-heavy, where regulators, sponsors, or contractual partners demand formal approvals before proceeding. A hybrid approach allows you to integrate both, blending iterative learning with required gates so that value can be delivered early while governance remains intact. This avoids the false choice between pure agile and pure predictive, giving teams a practical framework to navigate environments where exploration and oversight must coexist without undermining one another. The key goal in any hybrid approach is to produce early value increments without breaking governance. A purely sequential, predictive approach can delay benefits until very late, and by the time governance signs off, stakeholder needs may have shifted. Conversely, a purely agile approach may produce fast increments but stumble when required approvals or sign-offs are missing. By blending the two, you create a structure that gives teams room to discover and learn while still delivering traceable evidence at phase gates. This dual commitment to cadence and governance is what makes hybrid tailoring powerful for complex projects. On the PMP exam, scenarios will often test whether you can balance discovery work with compliance-heavy oversight. The trick is to remember the guiding principle: preserve cadence while honoring gates. Incremental delivery continues on its regular rhythm, while governance events consume evidence produced naturally by that rhythm, rather than demanding parallel processes. That way, you are not pausing the sprint machine every time a gate looms, but instead treating each increment as both a value delivery and a compliance artifact. Done well, the cadence feeds the gate, and the gate validates the cadence, creating mutual reinforcement rather than competition between the two modes. The tailoring process begins with assessing uncertainty, constraints, and the organization's appetite for risk. If most work is highly uncertain and exploratory, more agile techniques should dominate, with predictive structures used only to satisfy external constraints. If risk tolerance is low and compliance is strict, predictive structures will be more prominent, but agile increments still help test assumptions early. Once this balance is clear, you select a hybrid pattern that matches context, perhaps iterative delivery within predictive phases or predictive milestones overlaid on agile teams. Defining decision rights and thresholds upfront ensures governance and delivery teams know who controls which levers and when. Publishing the tailoring rationale is a discipline often overlooked. Stakeholders want to see why a hybrid approach was chosen, how it maps to project objectives, and what artifacts will serve both agile and predictive needs. This published summary becomes a one-page tailoring charter, showing which predictive baselines align with agile backlogs, how increments will feed milestones, and which artifacts double as compliance evidence. By making the tailoring explicit, you reduce confusion when different stakeholders bring different expectations. It also strengthens auditability, because you can show you deliberately designed a governance structure that meets both speed and assurance needs. Artifacts are only useful if people know how to interpret them. Tailoring requires you to map artifacts across modes so each audience can find what they need in familiar terms. For example, sprints and iterations exist within larger phase windows, with clear synchronization points where increment evidence is gathered for governance consumption. Gate reviews should not require new work. Instead, they should rely on increment evidence that has already been demonstrated and documented. A single cadence calendar for teams, governance bodies, and vendors ensures alignment. Everyone sees when increments complete, when reviews occur, and how they interact with phase gates. The calendar is therefore both a delivery tool and a governance map. Sprints and iterations define the pace of team delivery, while phase windows define when governance bodies review. The two must be synchronized so that increments naturally feed gates. Avoid creating parallel calendars where teams run on one rhythm while governance prepares separately. This results in wasted effort and missed expectations. By publishing one cadence calendar that includes iteration dates, milestone reviews, and phase gates, you create shared visibility. Vendors should be held to the same calendar so that integration occurs at expected intervals rather than through rushed one-off deliveries. Artifact mapping translates predictive artifacts into agile equivalents and vice versa. A baseline schedule can be tied directly to a release plan that lists increments. A requirements traceability matrix links cleanly to backlog stories so coverage is transparent. Change logs map to backlog policies for item updates. Release plans align with milestone schedules so executives see familiar language. Finally, the definition of done is updated to include compliance checks, ensuring every increment is not just functionally complete but also governance-ready. The single source of truth links these artifacts, reducing redundancy and enabling cross-referencing across audiences. Having a single source of truth is not just a matter of convenience, it is a governance safeguard. When artifacts are spread across silos, misalignment grows, and stakeholders begin to argue over which document reflects reality. By creating one system where baselines, backlogs, RTMs, and changelogs are cross-linked, you ensure that every artifact points to the same underlying truth. This prevents the two sets of books problem and allows everyone, from agile teams to auditors, to pull from the same evidence base. This shared repository is a hallmark of good hybrid tailoring, reinforcing transparency and accountability. Decision rights are at the heart of governance, and hybrid tailoring must clarify them carefully. The product owner prioritizes backlog items to maximize value, but the sponsor approves major shifts in scope or budget that affect commitments. A Change Control Board, or CCB, governs formal baseline changes and exceptions. Each role has a defined domain so decisions are timely and defensible. Without clear allocation, teams get stuck in cycles of second-guessing or escalation paralysis. By mapping who decides what and publishing thresholds, you preserve cadence while ensuring gate decisions remain authoritative and traceable. Integration management deserves special attention in hybrid contexts because multiple teams often operate in parallel with dependencies that span agile and predictive modes. Appointing an integration manager ensures cross-team dependencies are visible and that increment evidence is properly stitched together for gate reviews. This role does not replace team autonomy but stewards the seams where one team's output becomes another's input. With complex vendor ecosystems, the integration manager ensures contract deliverables align with cadence and governance, preventing bottlenecks at phase gates caused by fragmented ownership. It is a vital role in sustaining flow across organizational boundaries. Delegated authority must also be documented and trained so people understand the limits of their discretion. Teams can act quickly when they know the thresholds under which they are empowered to decide. Sponsors, conversely, can trust that only the items requiring escalation will reach their desk. Training sessions that walk through decision matrices and example scenarios help everyone learn how to apply the rules in practice. Without this preparation, published authorities remain theoretical, and people revert to old habits. Real empowerment emerges when delegated authorities are both visible and practiced in real decision moments. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Reporting in a hybrid environment requires a dual-mode dashboard so that different audiences can interpret progress in their own familiar language. Governance bodies often look for milestone completion and schedule performance index-like signals that show whether commitments are being met. Delivery teams, on the other hand, track burn-up charts, flow metrics, and quality signals to see whether increments are moving at a healthy pace. A well-tailored dashboard brings both into one view, showing milestones alongside increment evidence. This ensures leaders are reassured that gates are being met, while teams stay grounded in cadence-driven metrics. By blending both, you reduce translation overhead and prevent reporting from fragmenting into separate, inconsistent channels. Measures of predictability and quality are more meaningful than raw output counts. Stakeholders should not be impressed by how many backlog items were closed, but by whether delivery is consistent and increments meet agreed quality standards. Predictability shows up as cycle times that stay within expected ranges and increments that hit planned milestones. Quality is seen in defect rates, adherence to definition of done, and stakeholder acceptance. Reporting these trends helps decision-makers see whether the system is healthy rather than just busy. This focus on trends over totals encourages learning and continuous improvement rather than creating pressure for meaningless activity metrics. When escalating to steering committees, present exception-based narratives rather than exhaustive data dumps. Start with what has changed, why it matters, what options exist, and what decision is needed. For example, scope increased by 10%, velocity is steady, and at this rate we expect to miss the compliance gate in 6 weeks. Options are to de-scope, add resources, or extend the date. This approach ensures that committees spend their time deciding, not interpreting charts. Exception-based reporting reduces meeting fatigue, highlights governance value, and reinforces the principle that reporting is a tool for decision-making, not for showcasing volume. Risk and compliance in hybrid projects work best when embedded directly in delivery routines. By expanding the definition of done to include regulatory and contractual checks, every increment becomes governance-ready. Evidence packs can then be produced naturally from completed increments, reducing the last-minute scramble before gates. This prevents the trap of creating parallel compliance projects. When evidence is built incrementally, it is both fresher and more reliable. It also means teams can demonstrate compliance at any point, not just at gates, which reassures auditors and sponsors. Embedding controls in this way preserves cadence while honoring the governance requirements set by the organization. Vendor alignment is also essential. Contracts should reference the hybrid delivery model explicitly, requiring vendors to respect both cadence and gate expectations. This includes providing increment evidence in the same formats, meeting agreed synchronization points, and preparing compliance artifacts that feed directly into phase reviews. Kickoff meetings should orient vendor teams to the cadence calendar and reporting expectations, so there are no surprises later. When vendors work in their own rhythms, mismatches at integration points delay gates. Aligning them early avoids this trap and ensures external contributions feed the same single source of truth as internal teams. Imagine a case where a regulatory gate is scheduled in 4 weeks, but the backlog is still changing daily as discovery continues. The project team faces several options. They could freeze all change immediately, locking the backlog to preserve compliance focus. They could build a minimal compliance slice of the product that satisfies the regulation and generates evidence for the gate, while keeping the rest of the backlog flowing. They could re-baseline the entire project before proceeding. Or they could pile on additional meetings to track progress. I'll give you a moment to consider what choice makes the most sense in this situation. The best course is to build the minimal compliance slice, preserve cadence, and prepare evidence for the gate using that slice. This approach meets the regulatory requirement without stalling the team's iterative rhythm. It respects the principle that cadence must be preserved while governance is honored. Freezing all change too early risks halting valuable discovery work. Rebaselining creates delay and complexity without delivering value. Adding more meetings often reduces focus without producing compliance artifacts. By deliberately creating a thin slice that meets the compliance threshold, the team balances early value, continuous learning, and regulatory assurance in a single coherent step. This scenario illustrates the strength of hybrid tailoring. You do not sacrifice the benefits of iterative delivery when governance dates loom. Instead, you frame increments as vehicles for both value and evidence. By deliberately designing thin slices that address compliance, you demonstrate respect for oversight without breaking the delivery rhythm. Stakeholders see that governance is being honored with concrete evidence, while teams continue to adapt and learn. This approach preserves trust on both sides. Governance bodies feel protected, and teams feel empowered to continue discovery and delivery. It is a practical example of tailoring that aligns with the principle preserve cadence, honor gates. Common exam pitfalls involve breaking cadence to prepare for gates. Many candidates assume the correct answer is to stop iterations and produce compliance packages separately, but that undermines the whole hybrid principle. Another error is approving gate sign-offs without traceable evidence, which fails both governance and delivery. Some teams never publish their tailoring rationale, leaving stakeholders confused about artifacts and expectations. Finally, reporting only in one mode, either purely predictive or purely agile, is a mistake in hybrid settings where both must be visible. Recognizing these pitfalls helps you choose the answer that demonstrates balanced tailoring, respecting governance while maintaining flow. Breaking cadence for a gate is particularly tempting in real life, but is always the wrong signal on the exam. Increment evidence should feed directly into gate reviews, not be repackaged at the last minute. Likewise, sign-offs must be backed by traceable evidence that connects backlog items, acceptance criteria, and compliance checks. Unpublished tailoring leads to mismatched expectations, where one group waits for predictive documents while another expects agile dashboards. And reporting only velocity without milestone views leaves executives blind, while reporting only milestone slippage without burnup hides delivery health. Hybrid tailoring is about showing both, side by side, with clear cross-references. The safest exam strategy is to remember that hybrid tailoring reduces duplication by mapping artifacts clearly. Whenever you see options that suggest parallel processes, one for agile and one for predictive, they are likely distractors. The correct answer will describe cadence feeding gates, evidence linking to sign-offs, and a published tailoring plan that keeps all stakeholders aligned. This principle is not just theory. It reflects how real organizations succeed when combining iterative teams with compliance-heavy governance structures. By spotting these traps, you can answer confidently and show mastery of tailoring in mixed environments. A quick playbook helps teams and exam candidates remember the sequence. Start with an assessment of uncertainty, constraints, and risk appetite to determine why hybrid is needed. Choose a hybrid pattern that balances cadence and gates. Publish the artifact mapping so everyone knows which documents link to which increments. Run the cadence faithfully, delivering slices that test assumptions and produce evidence. Feed gates directly with that increment evidence so governance consumes real outputs, not simulated paperwork. Then, adapt as needed, tuning cadence or artifact mapping when new constraints emerge. This rhythm is both practical and exam-safe. The beauty of this playbook is its simplicity. It shows that hybrid tailoring is not about adding complexity, but about deliberately designing the minimum structure that satisfies both agility and compliance. By repeating the mantra, preserve cadence, honor gates, you train yourself to avoid overreaction when governance dates approach. Every increment becomes both a learning opportunity and a compliance artifact. Every gate becomes a validation of cadence, and every tailoring plan becomes a transparent map stakeholders can trust. In this way, hybrid projects remain both responsive and accountable, proving that tailoring is not compromise but optimization. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.